What is up, party people? It's Keys Dan with RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com, coming to you live in a living color from the Radio What studios. And this is my podcast, What Makes You Smarter? It's an extension of the RadioWhat.com internet radio station that I've been running for quite some time. And if you need DJ services, where do you go? DJLittleRock.com. Let me say that one more time. DJLittleRock.com. Check availability and get a free price quote. And maybe you can have me, yes, little old me, on the ones and twos, the digital wheels of steel at your next event. I like to do the weddings and the corporate parties and the karaoke jams. Yeah, I like it. I like doing it all. Parties are my specialty. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. But for today, let's learn together on What Makes You Smarter. Now, on with the show. Today on the program, 10 things you need to know today for Saturday, April 25th, 2020. 10 things you need to know today. Number 1, Trump claims disinfectant comments were sarcastic after doctor condemnation. President Trump on Friday claimed he was being sarcastic when he suggested health officials look into treating COVID-19 with measures like injecting disinfectants or hitting lungs with a, quote, tremendous, end quote, amount of ultraviolet or, quote, very powerful light, end quote. His comments were widely criticized, and health experts slammed his suggestion, which came during one of Trump's widely viewed coronavirus briefings as, quote, irresponsible, end quote, and, quote, dangerous, end quote, seeing as disinfectants can be poisonous or deadly if ingested or injected, which Lysol warned. Trump said he brought it up, quote, sarcastically to reporters, end quote, to, quote, see what would happen, end quote. The speculation about disinfectants was not interpreted as a joke by many viewers. The state of Maryland confirmed it had, quote, received several calls regarding questions about disinfectant use, end quote, as it pertains to curing COVID-19. This is according to the New York Times. Number 2, WHO says there's no evidence people can't get second coronavirus infection. The World Health Organization on Saturday warned countries against issuing so-called coronavirus, quote, immunity passports, end quote, to recovered patients because there's, quote, no evidence, end quote, they are protected from a second infection. As things stand, the United Nations agency believes such actions could increase the risk of the virus's spread. The WHO, however, will continue to monitor antibody responses to get a better sense of whether people can develop immunity, and if so, for how long. Several countries have tinkered with the idea of creating some form of immunity certificate that would allow recovered patients and those with antibodies to return to work during the pandemic. Chile was the first country to officially announce it planned to do so. This is according to Reuters and Bloomberg. Number 3, U.S. hits 50,000 confirmed COVID-19 deaths, outpacing expert predictions. The United States crossed a grim threshold on Friday, officially recording its 50,000th death attributed to COVID-19. The U.S. now accounts for almost a third of the confirmed coronavirus cases worldwide, and more than a quarter of the deaths. Many experts believe the toll of the disease in the U.S. is being underreported due to insufficient testing and excess mortalities. America's confirmed coronavirus deaths have now outpaced predictions by experts who estimated last week that 47,000 would be dead by May 1st, a number the country instead hit on Wednesday, April 22nd. Quote, just a few days from now, end quote, writes the New Yorker, quote, more Americans will have died from COVID-19 than the entire toll from the Vietnam War, end quote. The Vietnam Veterans Memorial in Washington, D.C. contains 58,320 names. This is according to Johns Hopkins and the New Yorker. Number 4, some countries begin easing coronavirus lockdowns. India announced Friday the relaxation of some aspects of its strict coronavirus pandemic lockdown measures. Some neighborhood stores are allowed to reopen. but only those situated outside of hotspots. Greece, which has received praise for its early actions in combating the pandemic as well as for its citizens' adherence to guidelines, is reportedly preparing to gradually reverse its lockdown measures beginning May 4th, when small shops, hairdressers, barbers, and beauticians will be allowed to go back to work. Greece's actions largely prevented a major outbreak. The country has had 2,490 confirmed COVID-19 cases and 130 confirmed deaths. In the United States, Georgia, Oklahoma, and Alaska have also eased some restrictions, though they all include limitations. This is according to the Associated Press and The Guardian. Number 5, Trump signs $484 billion coronavirus relief bill. President Trump on Friday signed a $484 billion coronavirus relief bill after it was passed by both chambers of Congress this week. The relief package includes more than $300 billion to replenish the Paycheck Protection Program, which provides forgivable loans to small businesses and recently ran out of money. It also includes $75 billion for hospitals and $25 billion for coronavirus testing, but does not include money for states and local governments. Lawmakers will turn to the next phase of coronavirus relief after the passage of this interim bill, and Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, Republican Kentucky, has said he wants the full Senate to return to Washington. This is according to Axios and NBC News. Number 6, CBO predicts nearly 40% GDP drop this quarter. The Congressional Budget Office on Friday predicted that U.S. GDP will contract 39.6% year over year during the second fiscal quarter of this year, which runs from April through June. The nonpartisan group forecast an 11.8% drop of Q1 from 2020. The CBO ascribes the massive contraction to the coronavirus pandemic and, quote, the social distancing measures put in place to contain it, end quote. It predicts economic activity will restart in Q3, leading to a 5.4% growth year over year in that quarter, or a 23.5% jump from Q2. The CBO says the unemployment rate will only continue to grow, hitting an estimated 16% in Q3, and efforts to mitigate the economic woes are expected to lead to a federal deficit of $3.7 trillion by the end of 2020. This is according to the Congressional Budget Office and The Week. Number 7, Nova Scotia gunman assaulted girlfriend before shooting spree. Nova Scotia Royal Canadian Mounted Police Superintendent Darren Campbell said Saturday a domestic assault may have been the catalyst for a shooting rampage in the province that left 22 people dead last weekend. Police constructed a 12-hour timeline that began with the gunman, 51-year-old Gabriel Worthman, assaulting his longtime girlfriend, who escaped and hid in the woods. Wortman then led police on a manhunt across Nova Scotia while wearing a RCMP uniform and driving a police cruiser. Wortman killed 22 people during that span before he died in a confrontation with police. It was the deadliest shooting in Canada's history. Police are investigating whether the domestic assault was the inciting incident, but they have not discounted that the shooting spree was premeditated. This is according to CNN and The Washington Post. Number 8, judge orders release of detained migrant children. Los Angeles-based U.S. District Court Judge Dolly G. ruled Friday that the Trump administration is violating the 1997 Flores Settlement Agreement, which generally requires children detained at the border to be released within 20 days. G has found the U.S. government to be in violation of some elements of the settlement over the years, though the latest orders comes amid the coronavirus pandemic, prompting G to express concerns about the safety of detention centers. G did not agree with every claim brought forth by the plaintiffs, represented by the Center for Human Rights and Constitutional Law, but she concluded the Office of Refugee Resettlement and U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, quote, shall continue to make every effort to promptly and safely release, end quote, approximately 2,100 unaccompanied minors, as well as 342 held with their families at ICE detention centers. This is according to CBS News and NBC News. Number 9, reports Navy considers reinstating Captain ousted over coronavirus warning. Admiral Mike Gilday, the chief of naval operations, reportedly recommended to Defense Secretary Mark Esper on Friday that Captain Brett Crozier be reinstated as commanding officer of the USS Theodore Roosevelt. Esper said he needed more time to renew the investigation report before making a decision. Crozier was ousted over his warning about a coronavirus outbreak on his ship earlier this month. Crozier wrote a 4-page letter asking for help containing the outbreak. He was relieved of command on April 2nd after the letter was leaked to the press. Then, acting Navy Secretary Thomas Modly said the dismissal was because he sent the letter over, quote, non-secure, unclassified mail, end quote. Modly later resigned after apologizing for calling Crozier either, quote, too naive or too stupid, end quote, to run the ship. This is according to the Wall Street Journal and the Associated Press. Number 10, Sony delays Spider-Man sequels as a result of pandemic. Sony is delaying the release of 2 Spider-Man sequels as a result of the coronavirus pandemic. Both the follow-up to the animated Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse and the 3rd installment in the live-action Spider-Man Homecoming trilogy, which is part of the Marvel Cinematic Universe, will have their release dates pushed back from April 8th, 2022 to October 7th, 2022, and November 5th, 2021 to July 16th, 2021, respectively. Subsequently, Disney's Marvel Studios will accommodate the Homecoming franchise by shifting the releases of fellow sequels, Doctor Strange Into the Multiverse of Madness and Thor: Love and Thunder. This is according to The Verge. That's 10 things you need to know today for Saturday, April 25th, 2020. I hope everyone's doing reasonably well. Let me know how you're doing. Leave me some comments in the comment spot below. This has been What Makes You Smarter. If you'd like to tell your story or hear the stories of others, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. That's it for me. It's Keys Dan, RadioWhat.com, DJLittleRock.com. Peace. I'm out of here. If you like what you hear, I encourage you to follow What Makes You Smarter on social media. Find it on Facebook at What Makes You Smarter, Instagram at What Makes You Smarter, Twitter at SmarterWhat, and YouTube, username Keys Dan. Leave What Makes You Smarter podcast a review and subscribe. Listen to What Makes You Smarter podcast on Spotify, iTunes, YouTube, Stitcher, Google Podcasts, and Podcast Addict. My personal favorite, learn with me on my podcast, What Makes You Smarter. And if you'd like to tell your story, I encourage you to check out my other podcast, What Makes You Famous. Find it everywhere using the hashtag What Makes You Famous. Call 501-470-6386 and leave a message to set up a time for What Makes You Famous. Support What Makes You Smarter podcast using the PayPal, paypal.me/KeysDan. Email info@radiowhat.com. What Makes You Smarter is a production of Keys Dan Enterprises Incorporated at keysdan.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for listening. Thank you for